This was quite a while ago. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my dream was to be an archaeologist when I grew up. As luck would have it, a friend of my mom's knew someone that was an actual real life archaeologist. I was expecting an Indiana Jones type. Instead, she was a 20 something postgraduate student that worked at my city's Natural History Museum. I met her at the gathering that my mom's friend threw, and I started talking to her about my interest in the field. I think she found my fascination with her area charming, as she invited me over to the research section of the museum so that I could look at the things that weren't open for the public. It was very cool experience, which I greatly enjoyed. The creepy part came after the visit was over. As a way to thank my new archaeologist friend for the tour, my mom offered her a ride back to her house, which she accepted. At this point, it was maybe 8 in the midnight. I don't really remember, but the point is that it was really dark out. When we arrived at her house, we noticed that there was a person waiting in a car with all the lights off, right in front of her driveway. The archaeologist seemed kind of creeped out by this, especially since her roommate wasn't in town. And so, my mom told her not to worry and we would wait until she entered her house before we left. She exited the car and went into her home without any incident. However, as soon as she closed the door, the parked car, still without any lights, drove off in a hurry. Even though this might seem kind of uneventful, it's still really creepy to think about what would have happened if I hadn't been invited to the museum and if my mom hadn't offered her a ride back to her house that day. I was 9 or 10, and this is back in the early 90s when latchkey kids were fine and no one blinked an eye. I was home alone and decided to walk to my local blockbuster, maybe a 30-minute there and back. I had done it before on my bike and wasn't worried or scared. I took off and got about halfway down my block when all the craziness started. Side note, unbeknownst to me, my neighbor's son was a drunk or a drug addict or something was wrong with him. My parents evidently knew but didn't tell me because he has moved out a while back, I guess. All of a sudden, here comes a cherry picker roaring down the street, going super fast. I remember because several other cars passed and this one made me jump and look up. There was a man, shirtless, in the top of the cherry picker, hollering stuff like, "Woo, yeah!" and your basic drunken BS. I immediately felt uncomfortable, and before I could decide what I wanted to do, he saw me. He yelled something out at me and threw a beer bottle out. That freaked me out, and I immediately decided this trip was over. I was going home. I turned around and started back towards my house, but nervously decided to start heading into people's yards to make it look like I was going into a house. That didn't help at all. He was already heading towards me. The driver was now slapping his hand on the truck door, obviously drunk as hell. They were yelling out to me with garbage like, "Hey little girl, where are you going?" I ducked behind the house and saw a large pine tree between the 2 yards, so I jetted out and ducked behind it to see if they were still following me. To my absolute terror, the guy in the bucket goes, "I see you hiding behind the tree, little girl." At this point, I lost it. I ran as fast as I could into a sheer panic to my house, backyard, and ran in, locking it behind me. I ran and checked the other locks and went into my parents' master bathroom and crawled into their shower and put a towel over me. I was sobbing. I called my mom and dad, who told me to hang up and call 911. I did, and they asked me if I was hidden, which was so terrifying. Nothing happened after that. The cops arrived right after my parents pulled in. The cops actually found the men, and they were arrested and charged with the stop and several other things they had evidently been up to that day. I wasn't the only one they harassed in our neighborhood, but I was the only child. And of course, it was our neighbor's drunk and disorderly son. So yeah, bad neighbor's creepy son. I'm sure you're in prison by now, but let's never meet. This happened during the summer of 2015, and I had just graduated high school, and I still live in my hometown. I was out with some friends, and it was getting really late, like around 1 a.m., so I decided to head home. I stopped by a drugstore close to my house that was 24/7 to pick up some aspirin and snacks. The one I went to was in the same parking lot as a supermarket. I parked my car close to the store and it was empty. There were no more than two other cars there in this giant parking lot, and I was nowhere near them. I head in and grabbed what I came to get quickly because I had this overwhelming feeling of dread the whole time. I felt like someone was watching me, but I couldn't see anyone else there besides me and the cashier. Then, after I had gotten everything I intended to buy, I stalled, checking out and just went aisle by aisle, looking at random things because I thought whoever was out there would leave if I took too long. Really, the whole time I thought I was being paranoid because I wasn't used to going out late. After 20 minutes, I paid and leave the store. I got to the door and literally bolted to my car, pepper spray in hand, and locked myself in. I turned my head to check the back seat, and right before I could breathe a sigh of relief, because no one was there, someone tapped on my window. I looked around before I left the store near the entrance, and no one was around my car. So, how did I not see a person there? This is where I really freak out. I don't know if this was Ted Bundy inspired or what, but this was odd. He was very handsome blond man, with slightly long hair and a cast on his arm. Now, my first instinct was to drive off, but he was leaning on the front hood part of my car and I didn't want to hurt him, so I rolled my window down just an inch so he could speak and maybe back up just a bit so I could drive off without hitting him. But nope, he stayed glued to my car. He then asked me if I could help him with directions and look up an address for him. I said, I really need to go, sir. Maybe ask in the drugstore. They can help. I already went to the supermarket and they couldn't help. That place closed at 8 and there was no way this guy has just been lurking around for 5 hours waiting for some random girl's help. He then went on about feeling really tired and if I could just give him water or food I bought since he had no money. I told him okay and began to reach to my passenger side, grabbed the chips I got, and began to roll the window down slightly. Like I expected, he moved closer to my window, but he was now off the car, so I hit the gas and he chased my car. I heard the scraping sound on the side as I pulled away. I didn't drive directly home in case I was followed and drove down the highway for an hour because I was so distraught over what happened. And the entire side of my car has been scraped from the door almost to the trunk. I am really sure he used a knife or some sharp object because it was really a rough scrap. I reported the incident, but they never found him or any similar incident in my town. He was watching me the whole time, maybe from the windows of the store because how else would he have known I bought food? I also think he hid behind my car so I wouldn't see him when I came out. I feel like he was trying to get me before I got in my car, but I got in too fast. I feel like he was trying to get me before I got in my car, but I got in too fast. So creep in the parking lot? Let's not meet again.